Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on the potential and implications of AI for business. I'm Dr. Alex Connock, and I will introduce you to my colleagues, starting perhaps with Kate.
Hi, my name is Kate. I work in the business development team for executive degrees, and I recruit for this diploma in artificial intelligence for business in particular. Really nice to see so many of you here already.
And Andrew.
Morning, everybody. I'm Andrew Stephen. I'm the L'Oreal Professor of Marketing and the Research Dean, and I'm co-director of the Executive Diploma in AI for Business with Alex. And we're looking forward to telling you as much as we can about this exciting program in this call today. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, so under where everyone is, actually, can you use the chat and just tell us where you are? We'd love to know your names and where you are. So just put John, South Africa or whatever, just to tell us where you are. We'd love to see that. What we're going to do is we're going to have a little sort of bit of a presentation, actually, but we're going to use that as an opportunity to dash through the incredible topic that is artificial intelligence for business. And so here's the presentation. I'm sure everyone can see it now. So we're going to talk about the potential and implications of AI for business. And that's our way, if you like, of introducing you to the subject. And we are very happy to hear your questions throughout. So please do play them in, put them in the Q&A. That would be great. And then we will answer them as we go. So don't worry about the end. Let's start with just a quick taster of what it is. Andrew, do you want to just quickly tell us what the course is?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still a relatively new course for us in Oxford. So it's exciting that we created a degree on AI for business leaders to really dive deeply into sort of the potential of using AI in business, but also the risks and the challenges and everything else. So sort of the upsides and the downsides, I suppose. It's a part-time diploma program, as we call them. And as you can see on the slide there, it's a master's level qualification. Experienced professionals come on the program. The structure is 4 week-long modules spread out across the year. They're usually 5 days long. So you sort of come to Oxford 4 times across the year for the formal part of the program. In terms of the faculty, Alex and I lead the team, but really it's a much larger team than that, because we draw on faculty from all over the business school, and indeed other colleagues from elsewhere in the University of Oxford as well, who are experts on things like AI ethics or machine learning and robotics. But we draw on our faculty expertise a great deal as well to talk about everything from marketing and advertising through to responsible business and sustainability, through to leadership, and of course sort of the operations and more technical aspects of AI and machine learning as well. So really it's a very, very multidisciplinary degree with a multidisciplinary teaching team, and for those interested as well, it can also be a pathway into the longer and broader executive MBA program at the Side Business School.
Brilliant. And Kate, would you like to just quickly give us a quick, we'll get onto the subject of AI in a sec, but just give us a quick intro into how people would get in touch with us.
Yeah, no, of course. So I'm obviously always more than happy to hear from anybody who is interested in actually making an application. The easiest way to do that is to send me an email. So I have my email address up here. You can also go via the website if you would like to download a brochure or to request a CV review, which I'm obviously also more than happy to do. We have an application deadline coming up on the 18th of October. So if you are looking to make an application this time of year, it tends to be a good time to think about sort of having that submitted. If kind of across the hour today, anybody has any questions about admissions, about the processes that are involved, please do pop those in the chat, and I will be more than happy to work through those as Andrew and Alex are presenting.
Brilliant, thank you. So Andrew and I also really happy to hear from people by reaching out on LinkedIn. I think if you search us, you'll find us on there. We love to see people's backgrounds. I'm already enjoying seeing the chat and seeing where everybody is. So we were truly global this morning, which is fantastic, or this evening, depending on where you are. I can see we've got someone from Tokyo. And so please, it's Andrew and Stephen, and it's Alex Connock on LinkedIn. Okay, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the profile of AI, first of all, really the sort of public perception of AI over the last century or so. Then we're going to talk about our course in a little bit more detail, what exactly we go into in that course, and with some good examples. Then we'll sort of expand it out a little bit into some business use cases. And then finally, we're going to look at 6 quick examples of AI ethics in business. I was just talking to someone from a big UK PLC, and I was saying, do you ever consider ethics in AI? They went, every single week there is a brand new issue in AI ethics that we have to deal with. So there's a very real element of our course and a very real element of implementing AI across business. We're very happy to see your questions throughout, so please do chip them in. So first of all, let's talk about how AI has been in popular consciousness. And I thought it'd be quite fun to actually go back to Frankenstein. So it was written in 1812 by Mary Shelley, obviously, on the shores of Lake Geneva. And this is a sequence from Frankenstein as performed at the National Theatre in the UK a couple of years ago.
I studied the moment of change from life to death, the specificity of the moment, the annihilation of the spark, until suddenly, months later, in this fever of creativity, I found that I could identify and replicate the prime cause of life.
What is it?
Can't tell you that, Will. You're only little.
What are you going to do with it?
I don't know. I have traveled where no man has traveled.
So even back then they were thinking about it. And then if you think about that movie, The Imitation Game, with Alan Turing, who's often seen as the father of AI in the UK and well beyond. This is a sequence from that film.
Just because something thinks differently from you, does that mean it's not thinking? No, we allow for humans to have such divergences from one another. What is the point of different tastes, different preferences, if not to say that our brains work differently, that we...
Oh, I've heard that people can't see the screen. Is that right? Can't you see the screen? Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Can you see the screen at all? Oh, I know what's happened. There's some slides on the top. Okay, I will just come out of that. I'll just get rid of the chat box. I won't be able to see the chat.
That's better.
Yeah, that's better. Yes, sorry. It was showing the chat. Let me just go full screen again. Sorry. Yeah, but Alan Turing, hang on. Alan Turing actually wrote a famous paper in 1950 for the journal Mind, and he asked the question, The Imitation Game. I propose to consider the question, can machines think? They should begin with definitions of the meaning of the terms machine and think. And it's interesting because we're still grappling with those points today. But look at the scale of it now. So in 2016 to 2020, China alone published 76,300 academic papers about artificial intelligence, and other countries were not far behind. The UK published a national AI strategy this week. Other countries have done the same. So just at random, here's Brazil, Turkey, many countries doing the same. The US had a final report on artificial intelligence and national security recently. And then, of course, in the public perception as well, AI is right there in the public imagination. I'm sure you've all heard of AlphaZero, the DeepMind computer that took on and won the game Go against the best human grandmasters out there. It's already been winning at chess and so forth. And then we've seen the creation of metahumans, which I'm sure you know about. So the use of the Unreal Engine, which is a games engine, to create metahumans who are rather realistic.
You create the narrative. I am metahuman.
And of course, AI is visible in our entertainment even beyond them. So if you look at your Netflix feed or your Spotify feed or YouTube feed, they're all powered by recommendation engines, which are powered by AI. And then finally, in this section, there's, of course, AI now being used for creativity. So there's a controversy last year when someone used an AI to create a new Nirvana song. And it's all striving towards this potential future point of artificial general intelligence. And that's a point of controversy. Andrew, tell us what you think about this, the potential that we might achieve AGI, as it's called, and whether it's even desirable or useful.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not there yet, are we? But, and for some people, they feel that this is a very scary thing. But I think really when we think about AI and how it touches all of our, lives and in very, very, many ways on a daily basis, maybe not at sort of a single, AGI kind of, sentient robot essentially that does everything. But the increasing embedding of AI technologies in kind of everything we do almost is kind of pushing us in that direction, whether we like it or not. And the real questions then become, okay, well, where do we need to pull back from that? Where does, I'd like to talk a lot about not artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence. So where do the humans come into this? And essentially, how do we, automate the things using AI and machine learning that, should be automated, either because it's impossible otherwise to do at the scale that we need it to be done at, or there are other good reasons for efficiency, let's say, versus the things that we don't want to automate. Should we be, automating things like creative processes, like making songs or, videos or images in advertising or things like that. So these are, questions that are out there, but there is no, single best answer or indeed easy answer. And so what we're really trying to sort of do in a lot of our research at the Side Business School, but also bringing it into this program is to deal with these really challenging questions and to understand exactly what we're talking about here, so we can all be, as informed as possible when we make those decisions or feed into those weekly ethical discussions that pop up, as Alex was referring to earlier.
Okay, so let's move on and look a little bit at our course itself and have a little bit of an outline of the course. I'm going to do it by going, first of all, through the year. Actually, Andrew, again, would you like to just talk us through how we go about structuring this course across the year?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the design of this, as I said before, it's sort of, 4 weeks, week-long modules over the year. And the modules are designed, there's a logic to the flow, and so the learning journey you go on. And it sort of all, should culminate with a really, broad and deep knowledge of all sorts of issues related to AI, and how you can apply them in business or other contexts. So quite a lot of our current students actually are from the public sector, for example. And there's, obvious applications there as well. So in terms of the 4 modules, we start with sort of the landscape. Some of the sorts of things that we've even touched on, just in the last, 10 minutes or so, form the basis for a lot of the discussion and a lot of the sessions that we have in that first module. So it's really about, the lay of the land, understanding, really all of the questions that we should be asking. So, what we typically would find is if as a student on this program, if you leave module 1 with a really long list of questions and maybe fewer answers, that's sort of the point. Because we kind of got to get it all out on the table, and really, understand also by learning from each other. One of the advantages of having students on this program coming from different parts of the world and different backgrounds and different industries is that diversity, if you will, really allows us to learn a lot from each other in terms of what the issues are or what the questions are. So module 1 is very much about kind of getting it all out there on the table, and knowing enough so that we can start to really hone those questions that we have around AI and its applications. Module 2 then is starting to get into the more technical aspects. So, this is not designed to be a program on how to do machine learning, because that's not really the way that we position this program. But module 2 does go into those algorithms, does explain how they work, all the different data requirements, where you could go wrong with the different techniques that are available, model building, things like that. So it's sort of lifting the hood up so that you can understand the technical aspects, and even if for those who want to do some coding and go into that sort of part of things. So it's sort of a technical module. Then module 3, we sort of bring those first 2 modules together. So the technical aspects, so about the algorithms and data issues and requirements, and then about the sort of the landscape more broadly, and then really look at dozens and dozens of types of applications of AI in practice, covering as many different industries as we possibly can in the 5 days of that module, so that we can all, really see how these technologies are being deployed, and maybe should be deployed and perhaps shouldn't be deployed in various different areas. And one of the real benefits of module 3 is, because this is sort of where everything starts to fall into place and come together, for you as a student on this, thinking about your industry, is you're learning a lot about how to take ideas from other sectors and other industries and other parts of the world and apply them to your part of the world, your sector, your industry, your company, and your particular job and your team, even at that level. And then the final module, is sort of the last part of bringing it all together, which is sort of wrapping it all in the context of leadership and issues around things like digital transformation, change management, managing technical teams if you're a non-technical leader, things like that, because this is a program for executives. And so, leadership is a massive aspect here, kind of going back to what I said before about that augmented as opposed to artificial intelligence theme. We need to figure out where the humans fit in, and the human leaders need to figure out how to, lead the people as well as lead the algorithms and the processes behind it. And so that sort of is a capstone to the program. It's really thinking about your role as a leader, and in doing so, also thinking about very tangible and concrete action plans that you will have coming out of the degree once you finish the final assessment and graduate.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so I'm sorry if there's a little black box on the top right of my slides. It's because that's where the chat window is, and for some reason Zoom, with its artificial intelligence, decided to block the slide there. That was a year in the life of the program. I just thought I'd also show you a week in the life, just so that you can see roughly how it works. And so this is a week actually Tuesday to Saturday. So you can't see the names of the days at the top, but that's what it is. And as you can see, in any given day, there would be we would really start at about 11 o'clock in the morning with what we call a LARC session, which is a kind of general discursive chat session for people who are in Asia, for whom it's early evening or even mid-evening, actually. So we would recap the day before's learnings with those people. And then at midday, we would start with quite a heavyweight academic lecture, which would run through till 1:30 with probably an Oxford academic. Then we'd have lunch all together in a very nice dining room. Then after lunch, we talk again, another heavyweight academic lecture for a couple of hours. And then we would then have a guest. So as you can see, for example, on the Thursday of that week, we had Phil Howard from the Oxford Internet Institute talking about disinformation. On the Tuesday, we had the former head of MI6 talking about AI in the intelligence world and so forth. So we'd have a great guest. On the Friday, we had Anima Anand-Kumar, who's from Caltech in NVIDIA in California, a very, very serious AI specialist, machine learning specialist. And then after that, we would then have a session called the OWL session, which is for people who are in the Western time zone, so kind of Europe and America, to again sort of recap and discuss the day's learnings in a slightly more informal way. And then after that, we might have a dinner or a tour of Oxford or what have you, depending on whether people are live with us or not. So that's a week. And then obviously the lectures. Andrew alluded to module 2, the machine learning section. This is the kind of introductory slides of one of those lectures. It then gets into the slightly more algorithmic stuff around the lasso model and so forth. But you can see that, we're getting stuck in really in any given lecture. And obviously the lecture slides are all put up on what we call Canvas, which is our sort of online system. So it's a pretty well structured course. Then we have some more informal things. So we have a book club, where we just collect fantastic links to stories that people on the program have found, and we have hundreds of these stories now. So we've got a really good sort of database, a sort of living live database of everything that's going on in the AI world. And we also have guests. So we have any given day we have guests. So this, for example, we had Tabitha Goldstaub, who's a big figure in AI in the UK. We had Anima from California, many guests. We had a guy called Matt Scullion from Matillion, who started a cloud data company, which has just been valued at $1.5 billion. So we kind of tracked his story. And I thought I'd actually play you a little clip from a guest, actually. This is a couple of minutes worth of a guest session that we did with a guy called David Bennigsen from Signal AI, who are a aggregator of data for communications functions within companies and for sort of understanding the perception of companies. This gives you a sort of a sense of what a guest session would be like.
But yeah, thank you for having me, and lovely to meet everyone. And maybe I'll just start by giving a bit of background to Signal and kind of why we founded the company nearly 8 years ago now, and then give you a bit of a sense of how our platform and technology works, and then perhaps most interestingly, can walk you through a couple case studies of how clients are using the technology and the data today to kind of drive increasingly sophisticated insights for their businesses. When we founded the company, we had this vision that we wanted to build this platform, or a thesis that we wanted to build this platform that could essentially aggregate the world's information that would sit outside of an organization, to be ambivalent about media type and structure and language and modality and format, and bring all of that disparate data into a single platform that could then apply machine learning and AI to that data, that could be trained by experts from within these large organizations, and thereby unlock a set of insights that would help business leaders essentially make better decisions, but more specifically spot those risks and threats faster and more efficiently, and get ahead of those opportunities, and ultimately make better decisions for their organization. So that's been the kind of the general premise of the background of why we started the company and what we were trying to achieve. In terms of how that works practically today, this is a kind of high level visualization of how our platform or our overall capability works. We started by aggregating a lot of the world's news data. That was the kind of first data set that we started working with. And today we cover about 200 markets, over 100 languages that we translate into English in real time. And that covers everything from print media to online media to the content that sits behind the paywall. From traditional media, we started working on social data. We started by aggregating millions of blogs, then chat rooms, then forums. We started doing deals like with Twitter.
Okay, I think you get the idea. So as you can see, the guest sessions are pretty in depth. Actually, they can tend to be about an hour and a half long, and we do try to get under the hood of how our business works and how it deploys AI in quite some detail. Andrew, do you want to just have a little chat about how we approach looking at the business landscape as a whole, and how we go looking for contemporary AI business use cases?
Yeah, sure. And so I'll do that, and then there's a couple of questions in the Q&A that I'll tackle right now as well. So I mean, in terms of thinking about use cases, and actually, Bob in the chat has asked the question, will the program also touch on practical frameworks for organizational adoption of AI? This question is very much related to how we think about the use cases, because we're very interested not only in, how could computer vision be used to do, X, Y, Z, but rather, how does that get adopted in the organization? So exactly to what you're asking, Bob, I mean, the simple answer to Bob's question is yes, absolutely. And it kind of comes up every single time, because we're not just interested in kind of what I often call the sort of the shiny new toys, which are cool and fun and exciting. But then, okay, how do you make this thing work? How do you upskill people, for example, in the organization? Or how do you actually get people basically speaking the same language so that they can understand what's possible and what's not possible? And so one of the sort of big criteria that we use when we're thinking about case studies or examples, and indeed the guests, the corporate guests that we bring onto the program, is not just sort of show and tell with the technology, but rather really talking about the practical issues around implementing that technology, about governing that technology, making sure it doesn't do the wrong things. And so bias, for example, in data is something that comes up quite a lot. And what we find is we talk about this in all of these sorts of things in module 1, so that we realize that there's organizational capabilities, and actually indeed one of the parts of module 1 that indeed then becomes part of the assessment is to help figure out your organization's AI readiness, so that you can then think about where those pain points might emerge with respect to organizational adoption of whatever it is, in terms of a given use case. So we sort of start there, but then what we find over the course of even the first module, but certainly by the time we get to middle of module 2, if one of us is presenting an example, or if we have a guest doing that, it's pretty hard to get more than about 15 or so minutes in before someone in the class is going to say, yeah, but how is this going to work in my organization? What are the practical aspects that you've had to consider here, and so on. So it's a really important part of how we balance sort of the technical and the sort of magical, exciting aspects, that are really fun to talk about, but with the sort of the cold, hard, yet very important, and also I think quite fascinating and interesting practical realities in organizations of all shapes and sizes. So that's sort of an approach there. So maybe I'll pull this, but some other questions, but I think we can come to those later because they talk about some other things. So back to you, Alex.
Yeah, we had a question from Shiram in the chat. I hope I've pronounced your name right. Do the modules cover budget, including resources, human and computing, requirements of implementing AI across different scales of industry? I would say yes, they do. I slightly hesitate because I don't think we've ever done one where we really did a very detailed budget, but we've certainly done the implications of AI application, of AI transformation in multiple businesses. I hope that answers your question. And then were we going to park that other question, Andrew, about, you mentioned at the start of the presentation that this is a new course. Can you tell us a bit more about why the course was created and what your expectations will be for alumni once graduated? Do you want to say that one, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question, Kevin. Thank you. So the very first cohort of this program will have their final module, module 4, coming up in November. And so they started in February of this year. The program was created because, in a lot of the research and engagement work that myself and other colleagues in the school do, because we do research on these topics, it just kept coming up again and again and again when we were talking to senior leaders of some really massive companies, including some that I would consider AI companies like Google, for example. We just kept hearing again and again that they felt there was a really strong need for all sorts of sort of skill development and knowledge development in industry around AI, machine learning, and sort of advanced analytics and related topics, and indeed the sort of the social science topics around ethics and so on too. And so once we dug further into that, what we realized is a lot of these organizations were thinking about hiring tons of data scientists, building data lakes or data warehouses, and sort of investing a lot in infrastructure as well as skills at sort of lower and middle levels of the organization, and a lot of technical skills. But where they were lacking is in realizing and introspecting on themselves as business leaders. They're saying, hang on, we actually don't know enough about this stuff ourselves to really think about not only leading those sort of existing teams, but think about where the future opportunities lie. And so once we heard that from a number of different people, and saw it ourselves as well in our own work, we came up with the idea that I think we need a program on this. And and we decided that it's such a big topic and such a serious and important topic for the future of pretty much everything in the world. We really felt that this shouldn't be sort of a quick 4-day, open executive program, as we'd call it. So they're lovely and they serve a purpose, but you can't do this justice in just a 1 week sort of retreat to Oxford type thing. So we went to the university and said we want to create a degree on this, and so it's the only degree dedicated to AI in the whole University of Oxford, and lying at this intersection really of obviously the technical aspects, but also business for sure, but also public policy as it pertains to business and related things. So really the idea came from the market, and this is, I guess, our very market sensing response to what we feel businesses need. In terms of what we expect of alumni, well, we expect alumni to go out and do wonderful things, as with any alum. But I think for alumni from this particular program, we really are excited to see what they then do with this newfound expertise and knowledge. And for some of them, they already have, say, a technical background, and now they're layering in the other aspects, or some are really strong leaders and they're layering in the technical aspects. So we're really excited to see what will now happen as our current cohort, wrapping up later this year, kind of goes back in with the very tangible actions into their organizations, and see what they build, and perhaps even see what new companies that they go and create, or other things that they dream up, having gone through this program. So that's really, Kevin, what we're hoping for, as people come out of the year-long experience.
So yeah, to answer Lynn's next question, actually, so the first cohort are just about to graduate. So strictly speaking, we couldn't give you a statistic on alumni, but I can tell you what kind of fields those cohort are in. So we have a number of people in government, military, that kind of field, who are definitely applying AI. We have people in the ed tech sector. We have people in this fast-moving consumer goods sector in France, for example. We have people who are in IT and IT security in the United States, people in hedge fund trading in Asia, people doing startups. We have a very interesting African beauty startup. And so we have a really wide diversity of practical implementations that people were already doing even before they got there and are still doing now. And I think that the diversity tends to be for the benefit of everyone. So even if you're listening to a session on national security and AI, and you're actually doing a beauty startup, it's amazing how resonant some of the topics can still be. Actually, Chantal has just asked a question, do you cover bias in AI? And actually the answer is yes, we do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to a couple of slides that I've got on there, Chantal, and just discuss them a little bit with Andrew and anybody who wants to contribute on the chat, actually, because I think it would be probably the best way of discussing bias and ethics in general, actually, within AI. I hope you can see that. I'm going to leave the screen like that just because I don't want to have that thing with the black boxes and the chatbots anymore. But I'm just here. There's some really good examples here of the kind of ethical debates that are coming up all the time around AI at the moment. So the first one, I don't know whether anybody in America knows this story, but this is a famous chef, Anthony Bourdain, who died, and a documentary was made, and AI was used to synthetically create lines of dialogue from him that he had never said. And that's actually a very big issue, which is coming up a lot in advertising and news and other fields. So the idea of synthetic voices. And Andrew, what kind of issues are synthetic voices creating, particularly in the marketing world, I guess?
Well, and I mean, this is a good example for synthetic voices, but also synthetic humans in advertising. And so the ethical dilemmas are really, you can build it, but should you? Or should you disclose these things? How do you disclose these things? Say if we look at it in advertising or sort of media content, how will the consumer or the audience react? When do they, where do you draw the line, basically? So, so you can think about breaking down the problem into really practical decisions or choices that need to be made, which is sort of my preference in how we approach ethical dilemmas in the application of AI, because we're at the point where the technology is there to do these things. And again, back to the point about the human role here, the human role very much is to, in part think about or dream up those things that could be done with the technology, but then equally, and perhaps even more so, to think about, well, what's appropriate, because the algorithm will just do what it's told to do. And we see that also, incidentally, in thinking about bias, and thinking about bias in lots of different ways. And so, to that question, I mean, I'd say, Alex, it's almost at the point where, if it doesn't come up in any given session of any of our modules, we're sort of wondering if the class is awake, because it's just such a perennially topical issue. And it's, we think about it in lots of ways. I mean, obviously, bias in data and what is representative and so on and so forth. Bias in algorithms, which are really just doing, what they've been trained to do. And so understanding that and how to try and de-bias things, but also bias back to the human aspect, bias that emerges because of our own implicit biases and because of, maybe teams that are not diverse enough to really spot the potential issues. And so, that then becomes an important issue that we have to grapple with as well in the context of bias that could come out of AI. And, we talk about that, we discuss that and debate that a lot in the sessions. But we also bring in some of the industry experts who are responsible for this in the big tech companies. So, for example, one of the people at Microsoft in Microsoft Research, who's pretty much solely responsible for thinking about bias in all of Microsoft's AI, is someone that we've had as a guest speaker on the program to say, well, how do you do that in a massive engineering organization with products that are used, by billions of people every day? Likewise, people from Google, from Facebook, and so on, to talk about these these issues. So it's an incredibly important and complex topic, which is, one of those things that we sort of weave in throughout, as with ethics more broadly.
Yes, and I think this issue of black box AI, which I'm sure you will know about, which is the fact that the AI might be taking decisions based on the choice of parameters which haven't been specifically selected by the person who built the AI, and that comes up all the time. And I've just played you a couple of examples there on the slides of the famous instance when the Goldman Sachs Apple credit card was accused of gender bias, for example, or the instance when Microsoft created a Twitter bot which was AI driven and which learned allegedly to be racist. And there are many, many examples, and it comes up all the time. Actually, Shiram's asked another really good question, actually, which is about regulation, compliance and standards around handling critical data enforced by governments. Absolutely, we do talk about that, and we talk about the sort of desirable standards and also the noticeable differences around the world in how AI is regulated now and how it might be regulated in the future. And we also obviously touch a great deal upon the fact that regulation of AI almost automatically is running years, if not decades, behind the progress of the technology itself. And there are just countless examples. I happened to pick this one up yesterday. About Lemonade Insurance being accused of deploying AI in such a way that it would be rather too good at rejecting insurance claims. And that's a really interesting one, because is that a regulatory question? Is that a choice question for the company? These things will come up all the time. Do keep the questions coming. We have another question up here in the chat. Could you explain, from Arafine, could you explain module 2 in a bit more detail? How important is coding for the course? Andrew, you touched on that a little bit, but do you want to just slightly expand how we go about that?
So coding is an optional extra, is the way that we've built the program around that. So module 2 is, the machine learning elements of module 2 are very much explaining the different models, the different supervised and unsupervised learning models, introducing you to then more sophisticated deep learning neural networks and so on, so that what these things are, how they're applied, what's an appropriate application versus an inappropriate application, just purely from you could look at that from a sort of a statistics standpoint, in terms of, well, you don't have enough data to do a convolutional neural network for something, or you do have enough data for a basic logistic regression, and I'm sort of throwing some jargon around, obviously, which some of you might not remember from a while back. But so the idea is to talk about the tools, not so much how to do the coding. However, for those of you who are interested, we then we make the code available. We have some additional optional workshop sessions where you can then see how it's done and try it out for yourself in Python, and so it sort of sits alongside as a complement, because what we've found with these sorts of programs with executives is sometimes executives think it might be good to learn a bit of coding, but really at the end of the day, the practical reality is other people are going to be doing the coding in your organization. And so how much code do you really need to know, versus knowing, are they doing the right thing? So it's you can write code for anything, but what has the data scientist actually chosen to use, given the business problem that's trying to be solved and the data that are available? Are they using the right model, the right technique? It's better that you have a good working knowledge of those aspects, which are, at the end of the day, enabling you as a leader, as an executive, to ask the right questions of your technical colleagues, without necessarily having to dive into their code and critique their code, because I think that's a step too far. But it's there for those of you who are interested, and indeed we found quite a lot of the current students are interested, and so we provide that. But if you have zero coding knowledge or coding background, that is perfectly fine as well.
So it's great to see on the chat. I just had a chance to look at it. So we have Takanori from Tokyo working in biometrics. I'd love to know to what level you're using AI there. We have Pat Cherapan in Thailand, hello, and Nora in Saudi Arabia, hello. what should we do for the, sorry, what?
Good question. I just went to my bookshelf behind me. This is another good one that's called Tools and Weapons. I feel like I'm not getting any commission on selling this book, but it's by Brad Smith, who was the chief legal counsel at Microsoft, and then is now the president of Microsoft. And so it's a non-technical read on really thinking about the light and the dark sides of all of this, and sort of how they've grappled with a lot of regulatory and similar issues over the years at Microsoft around things like bias and so on. So anyway, there's another book for you all if you're interested.
Yeah, do keep the questions coming. So just to round us off, just before we end, I'm going to have just share a couple more slides that I had lined up, just to really help elucidate the many fields that AI is in, and therefore that we have license to talk about. Even the most mundane things like how McDonald's are running their drive-through, and how they're selecting the offers that they make to any given customer based on anything ranging from the weather to their car number plate to who's in the car and so forth. That's kind of where AI has penetrated, or H&M using AI to more accurately predict demand for certain items of clothing in certain stores to kind of hypothecate the delivery of certain lines to the right places. And actually, we had another very interesting session. I might just play you a couple of minutes of this. This was with a guy called Ben Page, who is the chief executive of Ipsos Mori, which is a very big polling company. And we just asked him the question, how are you using AI? And it was quite interesting how he described it.
Facebook pay us millions of pounds a year to find out what people are saying about Facebook, not on Facebook. So we've done things around what are the ethics, how should DeepMind handle your health data?
Right.
Because they do a lot of work at the NHS. So what is acceptable? What should DeepMind be allowed to have? And what should they be? And then what should they be allowed to do with it once they have it? So the main ways we're using AI, and most of it is machine learning at this point, rather than general AI, but is obviously extraction of massive data sets. I'll show you what we did in Beirut in a minute, which was interesting in terms after the explosion, which would have been impossible previously. A lot of process automation in the back end of what we're doing, and then trying to making the awful surveys that you get asked to do better and more intuitive. So in terms of getting lots of people to design decent questionnaires, or indeed giving you DIY solutions. And if you want to now, you can go to our website with a credit card and you can design some questions and have them fielded in 10 countries and get the answers in an hour from 1,000 people in each country. And so, we might start to show you, just very basic stuff where you could choose. It would find you question. You start to design a question, it will find one that's already been asked that addresses the issue that you're trying to measure without you reinventing the wheel. You also then have the benefit of the data that has been gathered from this precise question wording in the past. So in terms of insight, some of the really interesting things, we've got some American national security and CIA people working for us. And what we did for the World Bank here was after the explosion in Beirut, the Lebanese government had loads of people claiming for money to repair their home. And, they were sort of saying that, so the cost of rebuilding is going to be $10 trillion. So the World Bank asked us to say, can we just check on how bad the damage was? So what we did was fly drones around, we're taking millions of photographs around central Beirut, which were then analyzed with machine learning algorithms to actually estimate the actual damage, the number of windows broken in each building, the estimates of structural damage. We then linked that to survey data on the ground about what people had experienced. We're putting all of that together to sort of build a map of how bad the damage really is. We did.
So there you go. There's another use case there. So I'll just stop him talking. Sorry about that. Yeah. So that was another interesting use case. And to be honest, we love those use cases, and we love diverse stories from around the world, and we love people to bring us materials that we hadn't even thought of. We had a question from Takanori. Is there a chance to get involved in the classes of the program? I don't totally understand that question. Kate, do you want to have a look at that? Maybe get back to Takanori.
Yep, I can do that.
Yeah, so any other questions, do chip them in. We're probably coming to the end now. Andrew, do you have any closing thoughts for people about how to think about this program and, you know, for whom it might appeal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you know, just to echo also what Alex was saying, you know, any questions that you think of, please reach out to Kate or Alex or myself or all of us directly, because, you know, we're, you know, more than happy to have further conversations about, you know, suitability of the program to you, and you know, to really understand what your goals would be, because obviously with any you know, postgraduate you know, program, we all come at these with different objectives and different goals, and so we certainly want to understand what you're thinking about or what you're wondering about, so we can help you make the best decision possible. You know, so that's certainly, you know, that the door is definitely wide open to you all in terms of seeking further information for yourselves. But then just also more broadly, you know, I think, you know, this is, you know, the newest you know, program, you know, degree program within the Sci Business School, and we're just so thrilled to be doing it, because it is such a fascinating area which really does touch, you know, everyone's lives in so many different ways on a daily basis, and in so many ways that we don't even realize, is also what makes it particularly interesting. And so, you know, what we found, you know, so far with the first cohort and another cohort that's about to start soon as well is, you know, just the diversity of backgrounds of the students coming into the program is you know, really impressive. And what that says to us, I think, is this is, you know, sort of the pervasive set of technologies of our time. And, you know, pretty much anyone who's thinking about the future of their own career, but their organizations and also just sort of society, I think is really drawn to getting deeper knowledge on this set of topics. And so if you're that sort of person, then I really hope that you'll dig even deeper into learning about the program, and perhaps even come and do it. And we'll see you in Oxford.
Couple of questions here. Arifine, do we talk about computer vision? Yes, we certainly do. Computer vision comes up from the very beginning, and there are a couple of people on our team who are specialists in computer vision and have really been thinking about that for a decade, and so we would certainly bring them into play. Anna, to what extent do we talk about philosophy? It comes up a lot because of particularly the black box nature of AI. There's almost no session which doesn't at some level involve philosophy. There are also AI philosophers at Oxford who we like to tap into, and we would certainly be building that into the course throughout, actually. Any final questions? So just to remind you how to get in touch, I'll just put the slide up again. So really, Kate's probably your first point of contact, but you can also look up either Andrew or myself on LinkedIn, or ask Kate for our email addresses, and we're only too happy to correspond with people. And by the end of the 4th module of this course, we're pretty much personal friends with everybody who's been on the course, because we've spent so much time with them and found it so stimulating. It's a phenomenally interesting and wide-ranging topic that really is. There are plenty of good quotes about it. You know, AI is the new electricity, which is a line from Andrew Ng, who's at Stanford. You know, AI is the clue to understanding the modern world. You know, and so for the world is about to get painted with data. That's another good one. So, this is very much a kind of Rosetta Stone to understanding the modern business and the modern economy, and we absolutely love teaching it, and would love to hear from anybody who's taken the time to take this call today, and do please get in touch. Kate, would you like to say any closing words?
No, just to reiterate that I'm obviously ready and waiting to hear from anybody who is interested in proceeding with an application. So as I said, we have a deadline coming up in October, but we will accept applications for the programme until the end of the year. So you do have a decent kind of chunk of time to get a submission together. I can see there's a quick question from Anna in the chat with regard to AI faculty. So there's a list of key faculty on the programme webpage. So I'll just pop a link to that into the chat before we go. But aside from that, it's just been really nice to have so many people join us. Thank you for such interesting and insightful questions. I think kind of, you know, the variety of kind of areas of interest and sort of ideas on applicability that are reflected there is kind of in itself a nice sort of reflection of the programme itself, as Andrew and Alex have both touched on as well. It's a fantastically interesting programme to work on, so I'm really excited to have any conversations going forward.
Yeah, and Vishal, that's a very specific question about a PhD. I think probably you're best to reach out to Andrew, actually. He would probably be the best person because he's the research guru. He's the Dean of Research at the school. He would probably be able to give you the most bespoke advice on that. And excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much to everybody for joining.
One last thing, Ken is on there. Hi, Ken. Ken is one of our current students. And
he is indeed, yeah.
Bloggers. So please do check out what Ken's been writing about the program on the SBS blogs.
Okay, thank you so much, Sotiris. Thank you for that comment. Again, I personally love hearing from people, so do reach out, and we hope to see some of you on the actual course. Okay, when's the first week of this iteration of the course?
So the first week for 2022 is the 16th of February 2022. So we'll start kind of in the middle of February.
Great. All right, we hope to see some of you there. Thank you so much for joining.